Hey everyone, we're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. We had several people sign up and we're just going to wait on them to log on. While you're waiting, you should see a survey link on your screen. You can use the camera of your phone, just like you're taking a picture, put your camera over this QR code and it should bring up a link to fill out a survey that will just give me some more information about what you're coming into this seminar with. So if you want to try that QR code, I'd appreciate that. Or you may be able to click on the active link here as well. And I can post that in the chat for you, but we'll get started here in just a couple minutes.
There we go. Okie dokie. How's this work out here? I guess we're waiting on people.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are a couple minutes after noon, so welcome. And if you've had a chance to complete the survey, thank you in advance. If you have not, there is a link in the chat if you want to look at finishing that. So this is our 4th seminar that we're hosting this semester. This one will be a combination of 2 of our seminars we've done. So this one is about resume writing and interviewing. So we've taken our 2 most popular seminars and put them into one. So we'll go ahead and get started. There's a lot of material I want to cover. So my name is Laura Walker Andrews, and I'm one of the counselors here at Blue Ridge Community College. I have a particular interest in career development. So this is an initiative that we've been working on to hope to provide students with more resources to help you with your studies here at Blue Ridge. So here's a little bit what I want to cover today, just an overview of resumes and then getting more into the interviewing side of things. If you have questions that come up as I'm talking about something, I will try to answer those. So if you want to put those in the chat, I'd appreciate that. So we'll get started here with resumes. So if you want to follow along and have maybe a Word document up if you're on a laptop or something like that, I got some feedback from students saying that it would be helpful to them, if they could work on their resume while they're going through this workshop. And that is perfectly fine if you want to do that. So just go ahead and open that Word document. And we'll go through some different types of resumes where you can follow along with the information we're giving. So chronological resume is probably the most common, functional resume and a combination resume. So we're going to go over all 3 of those more specifically here. A chronological resume emphasizes your work experience, and this is largely preferred by employers. This is the resume that we see most often that starts with your current job or position and then working backwards through your job history. This option works great for anyone who is a recent graduate, anyone who has part-time work or summer employment that you want to highlight. That can be particularly helpful when you use a chronological resume to help highlight those short-term positions. So here's an example to your right. So if you're working on this at home and want to just use this as a guide to help you with what a chronological resume might look like. So again, you want to list work experience in order of employment. So whatever job you have now, list that along with your responsibilities, and then the previous job you had and the job before that. So typically they want to see 10 years experience is what I have seen the most of. So if you've had 10 years in the workforce, you certainly have plenty that you can provide there, but you don't have to go far beyond 10 years. If you're just graduating high school or you're still in high school, fall back on your volunteer or your part-time experience. And when you're listing job duties, list those with action verbs. So you can see here, this example says, I train and supervise work crews, coordinated and supervised. So those are all action verbs that you would want to use in your resume. A functional resume is going to organize experience by skills. So instead of by the job, it's by your skill set that you have. This is good if you are considering changing careers, if you've been recently unemployed, that's been a common experience due to COVID-19, or if you're finishing a degree. So a functional resume can show off what you know. So again, here's an example here on the right. You really want to look at the experience and skills section. This person lists specific things that they've had experience with in other jobs, along with some administrative skills and really breaking that down into what exactly his skill sets are. So you also want to make sure if you're using a functional resume that you're using results and abilities, any accomplishments related to the skill. So you can see here that this person is taking a chance to brag about the sales that they've had in their job. So that's an important part of functional resume, is selling the types of skills that you have and bragging about your accomplishments there. So the final type of resume is the combination resume, and that is a combination of both chronological and functional. This works well if you're changing jobs or careers, and this one is going to highlight both your skills and your job experience. So here on the right is an example of a functional resume. So there at the top are the skills that they list, and then their job experience is there in the middle. So this is particularly helpful just to provide your education, your skill sets, and your job history and job duties all in one combination resume. So you really want to think about what might be the best type for you to use, just depending on what your goal is. So some quick do's and don'ts. Stick to 1 to 2 pages. You don't want to go over 2 pages if you can. If you want to use a template, Word document, those have resume templates that you can use to format your resume a little easier. Include your GPA if you can. I typically recommend this if you're in school and are trying to find a job. Listing your GPA can be helpful. Um, Someone did ask a question at our last seminar about, do I have to list that? And I think use your own discretion. If you have a GPA that maybe you're not so proud of, or you're trying to bring that GPA up, you may want to exclude that. But if it's something you want to highlight, then you can definitely add that to your education. Also, have a friend proofread. So it's really easy to get into a mindset when you're working on a resume where you may be overlooking any errors that you might have. So having a friend proofread that for you can be really helpful before you submit that. Some don'ts we want to mention is don't attach a photo. Don't use any fancy fonts. So leave the Comic Sans or the curls, to a different type of document you're doing. Don't stretch the truth. So be sure to stay as truthful as you possibly can, and you're presenting yourself to these employers. Don't use slang in your resume, and don't leave any gaps in employment. So that is one thing that I've seen a lot of, is that employers want to know if you've had any type of gap in employment. And we can talk about ways that you can mention that in your resume if you need to. So I want to get into some question and answers. So these are common questions that people have regarding the resume. One is that you have to have a 1-page resume, which isn't necessarily true. As you grow in your experience, you want to limit it to about 2 pages. There are some instances where you would have a longer resume, but those are very specific to a certain field. So if you're considering a career in teaching at a college in particular, then your resume is going to be a little bit longer. But for most people, keeping to 1 to 2 pages is a good general rule. I also want to mention the HR weed out. So since most employers accept online applications now, the average time that someone's looking at your resume can be 5 to 7 seconds. So you don't get a whole lot of time to impress people with your resume. And there are several ways that you can increase your chances. So making sure that you're proofreading, making sure that you're not having a photo attached to it, making sure you have a professional email address, and also taking a look at your social media. So it's important of how you are representing yourself not only on your resume and your application, but also on social media, because employers definitely look up that type of information. You want to go for a simple design with your resume and have your name and contact information on a separate line. This is due to the way that the computer reads and processes your resume when you apply to a job. I also want to mention the by zombies rule. So when you are doing your resume, making sure that when you're using nouns, you're using those for emphasis. And when you're using verbs, that's for description. So if you use the word by zombies next to your verb, that's what you want to try to go for instead of using nouns. So managed by zombies makes more sense than being a manager of zombies. So think of using those action verbs just as much as you can. Looking at the job posting, you want to use labels and keywords that they're using. So place those keywords into your resume as you're looking over a job that you really want to apply to. Make sure that you have a space between your bullet points and try to use common language while maximizing your industry jargon. So this is particular for anyone in the manufacturing field or someone who works on a particular machine. You want to make sure that it comes across that you know what job you're applying to and what your skills and capabilities are, but also not using language that's going to confuse people either. So you want to make sure that your resume is in a Word document format. There are some, there are some systems that use a PDF converter, and you may want to go ahead and save your Word document as a PDF just to ensure that your resume attaches to the application correctly. Recently, I've talked with people who've applied for jobs where they've had a Word document they've uploaded, but it wouldn't convert to a PDF. So if you can go ahead and convert it before you attach it to your application, that can be helpful in making sure that you get to the job submission. We want to talk about the cover letter. This is something that should always go alongside your resume. It's a chance for you to showcase yourself and explain your experience a little more. This helps the employer identify the job you're applying to, but also tells them a little bit more about your qualifications. This gives you a chance to demonstrate your knowledge and research of the employer that you're applying to, and also how you heard about the job. So if a friend referred you or you saw it on one of the job postings on campus, that's a way for you to let them know that. You want your cover letter to be straightforward, professional, and positive. Again, you want it free of errors and of good quality. So making sure that you have a friend proofread can be helpful. And your cover letter should not be more than 1 page. So it's a very short way of explaining the job that you're applying to. So basically, you can take your cover letter and break it down into 5 paragraphs. So your introduction is where you provide your contact information. You may want to give your address, your phone number, email, and then also where you greet the person that you are addressing this letter to. Most of the time, you want that to be the hiring manager. So if they listed someone on the job posting, make sure that you address the letter to them. If you don't see a name or you have difficulty finding one, you can say to whom it may concern or to the search committee. Something general like that is fine. Your first paragraph is your introduction, so letting them know who you are and what job you're applying to. Second paragraph is about your qualifications, and then you want to move into indicating your skills for the third paragraph. When you close, make sure you're thankful and professional, and you can look up Google or search the internet for examples of a cover letter, and you may want to add, cover letter for customer service position, and that can help you narrow down specific phrases that you may want to use in your cover letter. So moving on to your references. So when you are trying to find references for a job you're applying to, you want to identify your network. So anyone who has had a relationship with you, that, a teacher that you've had that, seemed taken with you or anything like that. So you want to choose someone who is the most promising. So anybody who would give you a good reference and they would answer the phone or contact the person back. Those are always good people to use. So typically they can include your teachers, your previous manager, someone at church, someone you volunteered with. So there's a lot of different options that you can use to identify your references. You want to prepare your request. So make sure that you ask the person, let them know what you're looking for and what types of jobs you're going to be applying to, and just give them a heads up, would you like to be a reference for me? This is what jobs I'm looking for. You also want to follow up once you've asked them and they've said yes, they will be happy to help. You want to follow up and let them know of any interviews you might have, or if you accept a job, just so they're aware of what's going on in your world. So then at that point, you can expand. So as you get other jobs, you can start meeting people and get your network growing. So here's some more examples of people that you may want to ask, people that are considered a part of your network when you're looking for a job. So friends, relatives, maybe it's an acquaintance at a volunteer position or someone you go to church with. So there's lots of different options for people that you can ask to be a reference for you. So the actual job applications, again, most employers do this electronically now. You can use job search engines like Indeed to locate jobs that you may want to apply to, but it's recommended that you try to apply directly with the employer if you can. Take your time when you're completing the job application, because there's a lot of information that you will need to provide them. One recommendation I have is keeping all that information in one Word document. So one of the things they will ask is, who do you work for now? What's the address? Who's your manager? What's the contact number? So those are all things that you may have to look up. And so having that in a Word document already can really help when you're applying for jobs, especially if it's 5 years down the road and you don't remember Maria's phone number. So keep that in mind when you're completing the application, and remember to use your network and think positive, which we'll talk about at the end of the presentation. So that's kind of a quick reference to resume writing. So if you have questions about that, feel free to put those in the chat. We are going to move into interviewing. Preparing for the interview, you want to learn as much as you can about the employer. You want to know about the job that you're interviewing for so that you know what skills and other things that you need to mention in the interview. So, especially if you've never done a practice interview before, you may want to do a practice interview with a friend, or you can also contact NC Works Career Center here on campus. They can help with practice interviews as well. You want to make sure that you have questions ready to ask the employer. You want to know your location as well as have your thank you note prepared beforehand. So we'll talk about all of these. Things you may want to remember is the name of the position that you're interviewing for. So the interviewer's name is important to remember. Make sure that you take a copy of your resume. Most of the time, they should have this on file and have it in front of them when they sit down to interview. But sometimes they may use it as a way to test you of whether you have your resume with you or not. So it's a good idea to keep one on hand. When you are interviewing, it's important to sit up straight. If we ever go back to shaking hands, having a firm handshake is important. Using good eye contact. So making sure that you're making eye contact with your interviewer and anyone else in the room. And when you go to the interview, take 2 forms of identification with you. So you probably have your license, but you may want to grab your social security card or a passport. This is so that if they hire you that day, you can go ahead and get some employment paperwork taken care of so you can get started right away. The other thing is your cell phone. You do want to make sure to turn it off. And when I heard this advice, I thought it was a little bit ridiculous. But there was a time where I was certain that I turned my phone off and I was sitting in class and my phone rang. And I know that I turned it off, but it was still going off anyway. So you don't want to get in that position where you have your cell phone on you and you thought you turned it off, but here it is ringing. So make sure that you turn it off, or you can leave it in your car or leave it at home. What to wear. So there are specific guidelines for what to wear to an interview. So you do want to make sure that you have clean and freshly pressed clothes. If you don't want to take the iron out or you don't have one, you can use, some fabric spray to kind of get those wrinkles out. Make sure that you have clean shoes. If you're wearing cosmetics or using a fragrance, make sure that you use those lightly, especially fragrances can, some people's allergies, it can affect. So just being mindful of that part of it. You want to avoid loud fashions and bright colors. That's just to keep things a little low key when you're meeting people and making a good impression. And if necessary, just be mindful of taking out any body jewelry or covering any tattoos. So typically you can find in the job posting, or you may be able to find it on the employer's website, where they may not allow body jewelry from the shoulders up or something like that. So it's just something to be mindful of, depending on what job you're applying to. Do's and don'ts of the interview. Do arrive 15 minutes early and be aware of your body language. Keep your feet on the floor, so making sure that you're sitting up straight, feet are on the floor, and that you're engaged in the conversation. Try to carry a pen with you. So, in addition to the 2 forms of identification, carrying a pen can be helpful. And then be positive. So, even in the interview, when you're answering, you want to phrase things in a positive manner. So, maybe if you are in a gap of unemployment and you lost your job due to COVID-19, think beforehand how you want to answer that question in a positive manner. So some don'ts we want to mention is don't chew gum, Don't bring other people with you to the interview. Try not to swing or tap your foot while you're in the interview. So, again, you want to be engaged with the person that you're with. And try not to smoke beforehand because that can leave kind of an odor or, you know, something that they can pick up on. So, try to save that for after your interview. Some practice questions that may help you in preparing for the interview. Tell me about yourself is one that is very popular for employers to answer or to ask you. So when you answer, you want to make sure that you have a way of answering that question. Most of the time, people tend to fall back on saying, I'm in school right now, and this is what I'm working towards. You may want to mention where you're from originally, what jobs you've had. So tell me about yourself is a very general way of trying to get to know you. Some of these others will go into what are your career goals? How's your experience prepared you for this job? Those are important to look at before you interview. What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? This one I want to highlight because it tends to be pretty easy for people to identify their strengths, but their weaknesses can be a little more challenging. So you want to make sure that you mention a weakness, but you want to frame it in a positive light. So instead of saying that I get engrossed in my work and I forget things, you may just want to say, I'm passionate about what I do, something of that nature. So there's a way that you can phrase your weaknesses to reflect as a strength. So again, just being positive. What motivates you to put forth your best effort? Some employers may want to know what is going to motivate you in your position. So, are you someone who is a self motivator, or do you need your supervisor to reach out? What are the things that are going to help you do a good job? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? That is one that is asked quite a lot. So, you want to make sure that you have an answer ready for them. Typically, you can fall back on they're looking for stability. And so, mentioning that you plan to be there a while typically is a good way to answer that one. Why do you want to work for us? What did you like or dislike about your last job? What courses did you like in school? How would your last supervisor describe you? So, these are all things that they may ask you. Why should we hire you? That typically is a question they ask towards the end of the interview that can help them figure out who you really are and are you going to be a good fit for this position. What was the reason for your lapse in employment? This tends to be about just trying to figure out why there was a gap. So, just having an explanation for them that reflects the practical reasoning can be helpful there. What to ask the employer? So, you want to make sure that you have questions prepared for them. And you can ask things like, what qualities would I need to be successful here? How would you describe your management style? What does a typical workday look like? Those are all giving you more information about the job itself. What challenges would present themselves here? What is your training process? And how do you measure employee performance? So, those are all really important questions that you can ask to help figure out, is this a job that you want as well? So just a couple of more here. You may want to ask what is the next step in the process and when do they hope to fill the position. That can give you a better idea of a time frame on when they're looking to hire. So we want to talk about the thank you note. The thank you note is a little old school, but it does provide a nice touch to the people that interview you. Before you go to the interview, try to address and stamp your thank you note. This makes it a little easier when you finish your interview and want to send that. You can go ahead and have it addressed and stamped and ready to go. So, thank you note can come in a written format or an email format. So, written, again, you want to address beforehand. So, this can also help you remember the interviewer's name and then address it, have a stamp put on it so that you can drop it in the mail when you leave the interview. Email, use the same etiquette as a handwritten note, but you want to wait until the following morning to send that. So obviously, snail mail takes a little bit more time. Email, you click send and it delivers. So just wait on the email until the next day. Here's an example of a thank you letter. This is a little more fancy with the formatting, but I want to point out the body of the letter. I'm writing to express my sincere thanks for the time you spent with me during my interview this past Monday. It was very nice to meet you and discuss your expectations of this position. I look forward to hearing back from you. So, something like that, showing how grateful you are for their time and explaining the job to you. You may also want to point out something that you connected on during the interview. So, one thing I've connected with people on before is I'm originally from Tennessee, and sometimes there's someone on the interview committee that is from Tennessee as well. So, I may mention that in my thank you note or something that you felt good about discussing with them. So, it's always a good idea to send a thank you note if you can. So, transitioning more to talking about interview anxiety, this is something that a lot of people deal with, and we deal with it differently. But anxiety is characterized by excessive worry. So, you may be preparing for your interview, but thinking through all these different scenarios of, well, what would I do if they asked me this? How should I explain this? So you're going ahead and being overly concerned about a variety of different issues. And when this happens, your automatic thought processes can start making the worst out of the situation. So even though going to an interview, it's a really exciting thing, it can also be very anxious. So managing anxiety before an interview, you know that anxiety probably will happen. So it's important to take a time out, and you can do a quick yoga session or meditate the morning of your interview just to get your head in the right space. Listening to music can be helpful. Learning any kind of relaxation techniques. So if you need to use like an eye pillow or just creating a space for you to kind of take a time out is important. Making sure that you're eating, so not skipping meals, but having snacks that are going to help you get through the day. Limiting alcohol and caffeine, those can tend to increase anxiety. So keeping those to a minimum. Make sure you get enough sleep. So don't stay up too late researching the employer, making sure that you still get your 8 hours, maybe a little bit more if you need that. Try to exercise. So if you need to take a quick walk or something like that before you go to your interview, take deep breaths. So there's a variety of different breathing techniques out there that can help you with kind of regulating your breath and helping you kind of meditate before you go into the interview. If you have time to, volunteer or be active, that's just a good way to manage anxiety on a regular basis. So maybe not necessarily before an interview, but just in general, to keep you involved and active. Volunteering can be important. So, doing your best. This is an important way to look at positive thinking. We can tend to get into the mindset of aiming for perfection and not really allowing ourselves any room to fail or, you know, maybe not do as good as we thought we would. So try to accept that you can't control everything. Have a good laugh if you need to put on a show or a movie to help you with, um, redirecting some of your energy and trying to make an effort to replace your negative thoughts with positive ones. That can be very key to how you operate in life, is just making sure that those negative thoughts are not overcoming you. Also, once you learn what triggers your anxiety, that can be important to be mindful of. So, if you know that it's a certain situation like an interview, you know to expect some anxiety going into it. You can process it with your journal or something like that. So just some more ways to manage anxiety. Do something fun. You may want to put on an audiobook or a podcast. Recruit an exercise buddy, so someone you can take a walk with, and be patient on having these routines. So it can take a little bit of time to have your routine down. So these are important, I think, regardless of whether you have an interview or not, but to practice some of these, especially with what we're dealing with um, in the world right now. Okay. So I had a chat from somebody saying they had to go. That is perfectly fine. So we hope you had a good day and thank you for joining us. We are here kind of towards the end of the presentation. So there is a video I wanted to share. Wellcast is a YouTube channel that you can check out. They do some animated videos that's on different topics. The one on automatic thoughts is a good one to watch. Talks about how to reframe your thought processes and stuff like that. So if you want to check out a good video, go to Wellcast and search for automatic thoughts. So again, the positive thinking is important. You may want to rely on close friends and family to help you with reframing thoughts, and try to reframe rejections into being unideal job matches. So when you don't get a job that you wanted, it can be difficult to not internalize that. So thinking of it as, maybe I'm not supposed to be in that job for whatever reason, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was. So there's different ways that you can reframe a job rejection. So again, practicing self-care and good hygiene, being social, and staying motivated and focused are all ways that you can increase your positive thinking. So if you're noticing that anxiety is more than just when you're interviewing, maybe you're experiencing a lot of that lately. A lot of us are, particularly today. Just want to offer some assistance to you. So you can rely on your friends and family who may be able to help you. You could reach out to a physician or a therapist. If you're a student here, we have a counseling team that you're welcome to come in and talk with any of us if you need help with community resources or something like that. The crisis text line is also a great resource to you. Their information is there. There's also some telehealth counseling that you can look at with Talkspace or BetterHelp. So I will be in contact with you, offering you another opportunity for a gift card. So if you attended today, you will receive an email from me with a link to your gift card. And you have provided all the information I needed on your registration. So just for attending, you will get a gift card through email very shortly. There's another opportunity to do an interview. So I will be contacting you in order to get some student perspectives. So we're trying to figure out if this format works for people, and is there another way that we can provide this information to you. So if you were here at the beginning, you saw the survey link that we had. So this is one to kind of see what you learned throughout this seminar. So if you are just coming in, if you will look at your chat, and there's a survey link there, and I will be posting this one as well. So if you'll look at that QR code and put your picture, your camera up, so that we can get the survey information. So I am going to, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat and I'm happy to answer those for you. And the chat link or the survey link is there in the chat box. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any questions, but if you'll keep working on that survey for me, I will stay on for the next couple of minutes if you have anything to add. But if not, I will be sending you an email and reaching out to you later. So thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I will log off for now, but thank you again for joining us today, and y'all have a good day.